This is Two on One, the internet's top sensation, where theologians engage pop culture in a variety of ways. I'm one of your co-hosts, the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
And I'm your other co-host, the Reverend Stephanie Kendall.
Hey, Spiff, it's good to see you. And this has been a heck of a good month, hasn't it?
I mean, it makes me miss Stephen Sondheim, as I do anyways. Makes me miss, theater, people, church.
I know. I was about to say the church needs to be more dramatic, but that is absolutely not the case.
Not the call that we're asking you into.
Yeah, I'm not putting that into the universe, and now God's going to be like, "Oh, let's escalate all of it." Hey, so today we're doing company, and I was going to start something where it was like, like there's the Robert, Robbie, Bobby, baby, Bobby, Bobby, Robert. But here's the problem: you go by Stephanie or Spiff. You don't go by Steph. You don't go by Steffi. I don't go by Art. I do not go by Artie. No one who listens to this show has permission to call me Artie. So we would just be like, Spiff, Arthur, Spiff, baby, Spiff, Bubby, Arthur, darling, Arthur. And it just doesn't work because we don't modulate the names.
I know.
Hey, speaking of names though.
Yeah, tell me.
I want to say my favorite name in all of our sponsorship, Jeff One Row Designs.
He's my favorite name too. I mean, yeah.
That was awkward. That was the worst.
Okay.
And it's all right, because if you're looking for great transitions to a variety of liturgical textiles, Jeff One Row Designs has got you covered.
It's so true. Oh my goodness. You know what? I'm going to sidetrack us for just a second. There is no, as we all know, there are no other podcasts out in the world. This is the only one that is out there. Yeah. But if you were to happen to possibly come across a Tig Notaro podcast, she also claims to be, like, I think the first and only podcast. I know.
Is she sponsored by Jeff One Row Designs?
She's not. And that's what makes us better.
Exactly. Jeff One Row Designs is celebrating 17 years of making ordinary time extraordinary by creating stoles, liturgical textiles, including altar accessories, frontals, banners, processionals, really anything you want that is supposed to express the story of your faith in the context of worship. They've got it for you.
It's true. And if you are one of those congregations that are maybe possibly just coming back together, or maybe you've been together for a while, but you want to make sure that you keep things fresh and new stoles, new paraments for your church, newness in this new year is a really great way to remind your people that we are called into newness, in every moment and space of our lives as each new person comes in and out of the party.
You're only 44 weeks away from the start of the new liturgical year of Advent. So
you need to stop that right now.
You can go to Jeff One Row Designs, JEFFWUNROW.com, and check out their wide variety and enormous catalog, including customization options for absolutely what you are looking for. Meticulously and beautifully made. We should note too that we are celebrating the new year with a new discount code for the same discount. It is 2on115. So 2on1, all letters, number 1, number 5, for 15% off your entire stole purchase.
It is. This is just look down, or if you're watching this, that's why we say it as well. But that coupon code is your 2022 coupon code. If do not try and put in that 2021, just 2on1. It will not work.
No, but it will work with a 1.5 at the end, and 15% off is the best possible discount you can get. And that's like buy 7 stoles, get 1 free. So maybe you could buy 7 Advent stoles. It's only 44 weeks away. And we thank Jeff One.
Please don't leave us.
We thank you, Jeff One Row Designs, for being our primary and top sponsor, because we like you. These stoles still steal the show, folks. Hey,
and what a show it is.
What a show it is. So the phone rings, the door chimes. In comes Karen Robb. Ba, 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 ba. Hey, Karen Robb, welcome to 2on1. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so excited to have you. Thank you for joining.
Yes. So for those of you who are uninitiated into the cult of Karen Robb, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?
Well, I do a lot of things. I started out as a music theater performer. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater, and I did that for a number of years. And then I found my way back to the church after a 20-year absence, started attending church after not having attended for 20 years. And that just led to serving the church and then going to seminary. Got my Master of Divinity degree in 2013. And now I'm working on a doctorate, hopefully graduating in May. And then I also teach at the college level. I teach theater classes. I'm still involved in theater and the performing arts in the Wichita area. So
my first encounter with Karen Robb was her church marvelously takes out an ad to celebrate that their associate minister is also an excellent performer. I remember, so you should tell your evangelism committee it works. I would totally go to your church if I weren't busy.
Okay. Yeah, my church is very supportive of the arts. So they're a lot of season ticket holders for music theater here, and they love coming to see me, and they'll sit in the audience and tell people behind them that's our minister. And
oh wow.
So, yeah, so that's pretty neat that I get to do both.
I love it.
I love that. We right now have a congregant who just made his Broadway debut, and in Thoughts of a Colored Man, and it's just exceptional. And I too have an undergraduate I double majored in musical theater and theater arts, and the church or the theater was my first church. I did not grow up in the church. I grew up in the theater, and so it has a special place in my understanding of how God works in this world. Tell that story, and just really excited for to do a musical theater month. I mean, a Sondheim month. Come on, y'all. This is right up Spiff's jam. But that you are on that kind of, we're on a little bit of a similar path is really lovely.
I just did improv, and I mean, what is the church if not improvisational theater?
Absolutely.
That is true.
So Karen, you're joining us today, and we did the Sondheim month, and I kind of threw out there, I was like, will you come talk about company? Because selfishly, I love company. And you were like, yeah, I mean, I've been in Sunday in the Park with George, and I was like, oh no, let's switch. But you said, let's go forward with company. So what is your experience with Sondheim generally and company?
Actually, I haven't been in Sunday in the Park. I always wanted to be in Sunday in the Park. It was, no, that's okay. I was in Sweeney Todd. At the Crown Theater here in Wichita a few years back. But no, I loved everything that Bernadette Peters did while I was in when I was in college. So I wanted to do everything she did. I wanted to play Dot in Sunday in the Park with George, and I wanted to play the witch and Into the Woods, of course. And so yeah, now I forgot what your question was. What was the question?
Just company. Why so?
Company. Yeah. So company I'm as familiar with. I knew some of the songs, but I had not seen it until a few years ago when Wichita State University did a production. So I have seen it, and then in preparation for this interview, I went back and watched on YouTube the 2011 revival of it. And I tried to get in a conversation with a friend of mine, Javier Ignacio, who is in the revival, the current revival of it, where they do the gender swap.
Yeah.
They just opened like a week ago or 2 weeks ago or something. And so
they opened a little over a month ago.
He's kind of busy. So I couldn't get in a good conversation with him about it. But I have done, I tried to do my research.
Did you tell Javier it was for 2-on-1? Because I bet he would have immediately dropped everything.
I wish I would have known, because I saw it on December 21st, and I could have been like, hey, here, this was great.
So by the way, I'm sorry, a side note, we need to petition the Crown to do an all clergy cast of Into the Woods. Just that one out there, we can make it work. I would like to play the second Prince. I'm putting it in.
I get a July sabbatical, and can come into Wichita and have played the Witch, Little Red, and Baker's Wife. But I've always wanted to play Cinderella, so just throwing it out there.
We could be the Baker and the Bakers. Anyways, okay, I'm sorry. So Company, we are a spoiler show, by the way. If you have not seen Company, it's a 1981 musical theater production. It's the last collaboration of Hal Prince and Stephen Sondheim before Merrily We Roll Along and Everything Falling Apart. It is the story of Robert, who's turning 35, and him dealing with being single.
It is.
It's more than...
Well, it is more than that, and also it is a lot of that. And I forget that sometimes, because it's a big show on parties and birthdays, and it's done in these like non-linear vignettes, which I think is very cool and fun. And I think for the church is a really interesting kind of model, and how we understand how scripture kind of play out. We do these little vignettes as well. But I'm always struck. I don't know why. I really shouldn't be at this point, but I'm always struck by how much it revolves around Bobby getting married and like finding the right girl in marriage. And and it's a lot of relationships, and what does that look like? But yeah, it's married. And so a question for you both: why are we so obsessed with people getting married?
Well, speaking, yeah, married, I don't know. I would say in relationship.
That's a better way of putting that. Sorry, I came in real hot with this. Like, why are we worried about getting married? I did not mean it in that way. I was just like, oh, goodness. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think, and I haven't seen the revival, but changing it to a woman at age 35 to be in relationship makes it a lot different. If she is wanting to have children, I guess, so, or, it's like, oh, I don't have someone, and I'm 35 years old and the clock is ticking.
Sure.
So that I think maybe for the revival is a different take on it.
It sits differently as a single woman. I mean, I know I came in real hot because I'm a single woman, in which people are always like, when you getting married, do you want to have and yet when I got ordained, and I don't know if this is your experience of serving the church, but like there's a lot of marriage talk, and like that you are bonding yourselves into God. And I think the ways in which we understand what it means to be in good and right relationship is really the question, and not that necessarily always, although sometimes that kind of contract, that covenantal contract that two people make into marriage. And I think company actually really does that well, to say it's not always great, it's not always the right fit, it's not always the thing we want to do, it's not the thing everyone's going to do, and yet it is also beautiful and good, and has a lot of really meaningful moments that come together.
You mean you're always sorry and you're always grateful?
I think that is the title of my memoir.
So actually, I'd like to speculate on this a little bit, because I didn't know that this current revival of Company is gender reversed, and I think we do have to talk about gender in the church and ministry as well. What does it mean that, especially written in the late 70s, early 80s, Robert is simultaneously dating 3 women who do the Andrews number, you could drive a person crazy. But what does it mean then with a woman dating 3 men simultaneously? What does it mean for there's a lot of questions that obviously are probably purposefully brought up in this. How does the church balance out no, that's not balance out is the right word. How do we address misogyny in terms of clergy? Because inevitably, right, like, let's just open that door right now, please. How do we deal with the fact that people will still say lady pastor as opposed to pastor? The same way they say male nurse instead of nurse. You know what? No, never mind. I won't go down that rabbit hole. It was just an aside.
No, I think it's the right question. Karen, you want to go?
Well, no, I was just thinking of something that I guess I appreciate about the people surrounding Bobby, even though they are kind of pushing him to get into a relationship, is that in the meantime he's always included. So he's always included at their parties or their dinners, or they're going out or whatever. And I don't think the church is always very good at including people who aren't couples. Or, I was talking to a member this morning and I said, what is it that we always say? We want, you sit around in church meetings and we say, we need to attract what? More young families. That, I don't know if that comes up in your churches, but that comes up in my church all the time. We need to attract more young families. And I said, I think we're leaving out all of these other demographics. Like, what about the older people? What about people who are widowed or single or divorced? Or what about our, our young people? I feel like, at least in my congregation, we graduate out our high school seniors and we never expect to see them again until maybe they get married, have children, and maybe make their way back to the church. Like, there's nothing for them. We don't offer them anything.
Well, right. We give them a laundry bag and a pat on the back and say, see you at Christmas, maybe.
Right.
Well, that's a really great point. So we have a young adult group at our church that I run. It's called YAS, which stands for Young Adult Socials now. It's very fun. But our rule is you have to be 21 to join, because we meet at a bar, but we'll never tell you when you're too old to consider yourself a young adult, because again, as someone who is nearing 40 and is still single, and I often have, but I have things in common with the like younger single people than I do sometimes with the established married people that are my age or older. And I was noticing that with my older congregants as well. We have a lot of really cool older people that are just have been single their whole lives by choice. They don't have any children. They go out, they have fun, and they want to come to the bar and talk theology and things. They don't want to necessarily be pigeoned into a group of whatever their age demographic is that says this is how you should be. And so to your point, I think that's a really important question on how does the church continue to invite people into spaces where we have said you no longer fit, or you no longer belong, maybe, or no longer you've aged out, you're no longer 35.
That's the question. Our young adult group at Riverside, by the way, is like 55 and younger, is how it's described in the bylaws, which I find hilarious.
I love that.
So do you kick them out after 55?
Well, if we had anybody between, no, I'm kidding. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, but I agree with that. Like we have a very clear understanding of what we're supposed to be. Part of what I like in company is there's a variety of married couples, and a variety of ways in which they operate. I am looking at the cast list because I can never remember who is whom, and forgive me. Can we talk about Joanne for a second?
Always. The best.
The cynical, acerbic, the little things you do together. Is that the theme song for like church community, or should it be like, I will admit sometimes I want to turn around in board meetings and go, and Jesus Christ, is it fun? But I don't. But the little things you do together is her take on marriage, where it's what is it? It's not, oh, let me grab the lyric, because if I don't, I'll regret it. Please talk amongst yourselves as I.
Well, I have it. It's interesting you say this. This is going to be one of my final answers, so I won't use it as my final answer. I'll talk about it here. I think the little things we do together is a real kind of cool take on that Matthew 16, who do you say that I am? It's how we talk about who we are and how we talk about the people we're in relationship with through the ways in which you do things together. It's good, it's bad, it's all those little things. Who do you say that I am? I am so-and-so's wife. We go to this shop, we do these things. And so for me, I was like, oh, what a cool way in which these people introduce themselves to the audience, to each other in a way. Again, these are kind of vignettes, and they're kind of soloed, but I don't know. I've been playing a lot with that text lately, the who do you say that I am? And I think it's a question that we ask once and then say, cool, nice to meet you, and then we move on. But I think it's a question that we need to continue to ask. And I think the things we do together makes us say, how do we continue to ask that question?
Karen, how do you feel? Is it not talk of God in the decade ahead that allows us to get through the worst, but I do and you don't, and nobody said that? And who brought the subject up first?
You found the lyrics.
I did. They're right there. Well, I mean it as how about are congregations driven by the next big event, or do they ultimately succeed in the little things? The showing up for one another. How do we cultivate come to boring, unsexy church where it's gonna seem like the same thing every week, but you'll get used to it.
Right. We just had the pandemic has just changed everything and messed with everything, but we had a pretty good sized group of people at church on our picnic that we had back in October, and then it kind of like pooped out and we had 40 people in church, and then we had a pretty good group of people at our big Christmas music Sunday a couple of weeks ago, and then last Sunday I'm like, well, where are all those people? Because it is, our senior minister has said on Easter Sunday, half jokingly, half serious, to the congregation, we do this every week.
Mm-hmm.
There's 350 people here today, and next week there'll be 100, maybe. Yeah, it's I think it is there is this we have this great core group at Plymouth and it is about, and they take care of each other, and during the pandemic they were bringing food to each other and checking on one another and are there for each other but that's like 40 people, and then there's all these other people who just show up for the big events.
Another 100 people. Sorry.
They're not there for the little things we do together. They're there for the big things.
Well, and I mean, I think in the context, to extend the metaphor too, there's the way the song begins to be sung is it Paul and another couple is showing off judo, and like there is a fight dependent on how it works, where it's just awkward and kind of lovely and sort of horrible, and that's where the little things you do together happen. And I think about how churches fight, because sometimes they have to, and my thing is always, we're not going to fight, but we're going to fight well. If we're going to have a divisive board meeting, we're going to break bread before it starts. We're going to serve each other the cup before it ends. And there's going to be the mishmash of human experience in between. I don't know. I struggle with saying to folks like, no, seriously, make the commitment to show up every Sunday for 6 months, have the same conversation with somebody who has a memory problem 25 times, have the same green bean casserole that's not great, but you can put salt on it and it's good, and realize that we do ode to joy all the time, but also see how you're transformed through ritual and habit and consistency. I don't know. Spiff, what do you think?
Well, I think it's an invitation to let people show their gifts, right? So David and Jenny's like, I do judo, or is it karate, or whatever. And he's like, you don't, you do. And she's like, watch, I'll show you. Right. And he's like, well, and then there's this real kind of like, I can stop you, I can do it. And there's a lot of, I noticed, because I rewatched it in preparation for this yesterday as well, that there's a lot of like kind of bickering and fighting and kind of tension in all of these relationships in what's meant to be a party. And I think the church glosses over the tension and the conflict that arises just in relationships, to the point where we say, but it's the party, let's be at the party, let's like, welcome to this party, because we're too afraid that people are going to see people doing karate and leave. And those are the moments that, if we let them be authentic and we lean in and we say, this is who we are, more people will want to stay at the party. More people will want to join the party, because you're going to hear of the, silly party last week where someone was doing karate. And so I think those are the really holy moments, those moments in which we say, that's not exactly right. That's not, and those moments generally happen when we are less performative, and the big days are performative. And so we on 2-in-1 here, we have said, like, join us in some random Tuesday in July or whatever, like at church, like the church invitation should be like, I don't know, May 17th, join us, right? Rather than like Christmas, Easter, here are the big things. Because yes, those are days that inform our faith, but like, who how our relationship is formed and informed are those days in between. And so for me, I think that was what company does really beautifully, is to say, here are the little moments in between in the big party, and you are invited, but make sure you know that your party trick is welcome.
I like that. On the Joanne thing, I do want to ask too about the seminal and greatest song really to come out of the show, Ladies Who Lunch. So I will admit that my first exposure to Ladies Who Lunch was actually the Forbidden Broadway version, Here's to the Ladies Who Screech. So I still hear a pack a day, a Tanqueray, another vodka stinger. It's famously done by Elaine Stritch. She originated the role of Joanne, and there's actually documentary footage of Elaine Stritch far too drunk to sing, or is it? I don't want to like slander her memory, but I believe she was under the influence and she couldn't hit any notes and she was struggling and everything else. And it's showing Prince and Sondheim working with her and eventually saying, "Go home, sleep it off," and she comes back. Joanne sings the song "Ladies Who Lunch." I don't know about you. Does your church have ladies' luncheons? Do we, and maybe literal or maybe not literal? Do we ever insulate ourselves by keeping up? Does anyone still wear a hat? Do we have a lot of hats in the greater church? We don't have to talk about specific churches.
We had a women's guild. When I first got here in 2011, there was the Women's Guild, and once a month they were the ladies who lunched, although it was at 10:30 in the morning. So I never really wanted to eat because, I got up at 6:30, so I had breakfast and I'm going to eat my lunch at noon. But anyway, I'm like, who eats at 10:30?
Well, if you got to go to bed at 5.
So they had this once a month, and they would bring in a speaker, and that just that was maybe 30 people when I first got here, and that had dwindled down to about 8 that were still gathering right before the pandemic in 2019. And we were trying at that point to re-envision that group's purpose or reason for existing when the pandemic hit, and so we didn't really get off the ground with that. And we were also trying to, because there's a men's club too. There were 2 different men's groups, and one of them had almost completely died, and it's kind of like, maybe we need to not have like the women's group and the men's group. Why don't we just have a group?
I always say that I insist that like men's breakfast is a target demographic. It's, I can watch BET. It's that, like, show up for what you want to show up for, participate what you want to participate for, and realize the space that is made. With Ladies Who Lunch, if you're nodding, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just like, yeah, I think we would have a ladies group if we believed in gender in my church. And
that's part of it too. How do we create the inclusive?
And hold up, right? Because part of the issue is that, like, we're also not saying don't be ladies, don't be women, right? Like, it's also not that. It's just like, if you find yourself wanting to come to this thing that may or may not be named ladies, come. I don't, like, we don't care who you are. Well, we care who you are, but like, your gender is not what gets you a ticket into any of our spaces. And so but what your question about the hats, I mean, I serve a church that identifies as a queer womanist church, and so like we've got hats. We've got, when we are in person, we've got hats, and it has changed my wardrobe significantly in ways that I have y'all go to my Instagram page, you will see what I wore to Diana the Musical, which is a giant fake for like trimmed hat and like a long wig, and because I wanted to look like the church, or the theater has always been my church, and so I dress up, and my people inform how I understand what that looks like and feels like for me, especially as an Enneagram 3. So we can name that Spiff loves a good dress up game. But it informs how I understand my presence in a space, particularly theater, which is for me a form of church. And so I think church writ large still does very much have the ladies with the hats. And especially if you start looking at Black context and context outside like the white mainline church.
So the last question about Ladies Who Lunch. The whole idea of it is there's almost an irony or a pervasive, she realizes halfway in it, she is one of the ladies who lunches, or ladies who lunch. And therefore it becomes almost a torch song, an anthem to it. The church isn't great at self-reflection. And I mean the Big C church. I am far more critical of the institution of church on this show than I am in my outside life, because I'm able to say here, this is how we failed. This is how we're not doing our work. We all serve in congregational context where there's some great stuff that happens and there's some things that we can change. And we also serve a greater church that is like flailing on the beach like a whale that's washed up. How do we, I don't want to mix too many metaphors. This isn't a Free Willy show. How does this dinosaur survive the crunch? See, I did it.
Like, I don't want to mix too many metaphors and then you bring in dinosaurs.
Well, no, I brought in a lyric, so.
I know. Karen?
I'm trying, I guess I'm trying to answer that a little bit in my doctoral work. I spent 2 years interviewing people as to their reasons for leaving church. So, and then I wrote a play based on the story. So think of the vagina monologues, only not about vaginas. It's about church.
Why not?
And and I ended up collecting the stories of 56 people as to their reasons for leaving, and then I really focused on 8 of those to put together for the play. But in trying to figure out how to church better, or how to survive, or how to still be here in 10 years, I thought it was important to listen to stories of those who left and why they left, rather than just look at the statistics. There were some themes that came up as far as, welcome and not feeling welcome. So people who were members of the LGBTQ plus community, or women who were part of very conservative fundamentalist churches who didn't feel like they had a voice, or who felt oppressed. So those stories came up, but also a couple of stories from people who left progressive churches because they felt like the church was so afraid of offending people that they never did anything. That was one comment that came up. And also the idea of there was a young person who said there was times they didn't feel well because their family weren't able to contribute financially, and there were issues of not feeling welcome after graduating from high school, not feeling like they had a space. So there was lots of not feeling like there was a place in the community for them.
I always wonder why we welcome people into membership, but we don't recognize when they depart it. Like, I recognize it'd be weird to be like, hey, it's the end of worship. By the way, here's 3 families that are leaving because they're mad. But to be able to say, like, definitively, our time together is over. Take us out of the directory. Please stop wondering where we've gone. We're leaving. We're done. I wish that was more surreptitious, because in part, you'd have to plan it, just like hopefully you plan people joining. And therefore, folks might say, how do we have this conversation? I mean, can you imagine a church? And I love the work you're doing, and I can't wait to see it in Tulsa. I'm going to drive down because I missed it locally. Can you imagine what would happen if we had exit interviews like you've done with folks? And isn't that also kind of seeking out the sheep who stray?
Well, I do. Sometimes I do that, and I've been known to do that. Especially with our young people that are trying out our church for the first time. Our young adult gatherings are the second Sunday of the month, and they come in, and it's a lot of unchurched LGBT folk, and we are a very specific type of church. We do a very specific, we are multilingual, we are inclusive, we are all things. And sometimes that works for people and sometimes it doesn't. But one of the things I always say is like, I am not your keeper. It is fine. Come, please join us. Oh my goodness, please join us. Please, like ask the questions, do the things. And if this isn't for you, but you are still someone that wants to, I don't know, find a church and you still want a faith home, but this just isn't it, come talk to me. Let me help you find that right place. And I have helped kind of rehome, I guess, for lack of a better term, people. And I bless it because I think that we hold on to things that aren't ours to hold on to, like people and membership and things. And if we were to say, hey, like we're still online, or we are a church that sometimes uses gender expansiveness for God, including Jesus. And maybe that's not where you're at in your faith. And maybe you want to get there. So, let's journey together. But also, maybe you're just not ready for that yet, or it's not what you're looking for. And that's okay too. And so, I've got a network of people in the city. Let me help you find the right one. And now, am I ever going to send them to Hillsong? Absolutely not. But will I send them maybe to a place that, is a little less, I don't know, pushing the envelope, a little bit, maybe just a little bit more traditional. Which is weird to say that considering the church that I serve right now is the oldest in our denomination. But it's also what I really like about our church is because it shows like we don't have to stay with what we had. We don't have to stay just because it's where we happen to find ourselves. And we don't have to be afraid of people leaving. And I think company in a way is really beautifully written to expose the need to say goodbye and hello again, and the cycles in which we continue to create spaces of community and worship and all of that.
Marvelous.
And so just saying, like, to your thing, do we bless it? I mean, some people do. And it's also hard. I'm not going to, like, we had a big exodus right before I came, and that's all I heard about. All the people that left was the only thing I heard about. And I said, okay, well, tell me why you stayed. I'm less interested in why these people left. I want to know why you stayed. What is special about this place and us on our time together? And it's those little moments. It is, it's every little vignette that these people told me that said, it's me and my husband doing karate. It is, like it is the work that we do in community where we joke about all the things. So
more churches need karate, like couples karate classes is what I'm really getting out of this.
It's just such a funny part of that story, but like writ large, it's all the things. It's the cold feet before a wedding, and or not wanting to get married and still doing it and making it work, or blessing divorces or blessing marriages that have been legal for 8 years and together for 40, and all of those things, or redoing weddings that are legal, but maybe they weren't done in a church because at the time church wasn't welcoming to them, and so we bless it. And so it's all those little stories that make up why people stayed and make up why we continue to be in relationship with each other.
Okay, so here's the question then. Is the church ultimately a collection of a lot of little things that think they're big, or a lot of big things that we assume are little? We're in that magical time right now of Epiphany between, Christmas and Easter. So I posted on Facebook a while ago. Somebody was like, you should do nativities that are appropriate for each gospel and no mixing them. So like Mark, you should just have silence. And then suddenly John the Baptist lowered from the rafters, covered eating insects, yelling, repent. And I was like, crazy. I was like, we haven't really, firmed up our Christmas plans yet. And one person in my church is like, folks only show up 2 or 3 times a year. We can't do that to them. And it's really kind of her to think about the people who show up only 2 or 3 times a year. but now I kind of want to have like the crazy John neon light show. Anyways, I digress. Christmas and Easter are big days. And I don't know about y'all, but I always say it's really hard to mess up Christmas and Easter because it's pretty much cut and dry. It's what we know, and it's what we know how to do. And there's always something new to it, but it's not like we're going to introduce new songs on Christmas, right? So does that make Christmas a big thing and Easter a big thing that we always repeat, and therefore it becomes a manageable bit? Or is it what we consider a little thing, which is really too big and expansive to understand? Did I just Arthur a question? I think I just Arthured. I apologize.
No, I think it's a great question.
Okay. That's good. I like the stunned silence.
No, I want to make sure Karen has a time to answer and think.
Boy, I don't know. I mean, you can introduce new songs on Christmas, but you'll get in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is the trouble aspect of congregational ministry.
You don't get in trouble if you introduce new songs all the time, though. I think that there's something to saying to answer your question, Arthur. I think we make bigger deals out of the bigger things when we should look at all things. Like I said, going back, join us in a random Sunday in May sort of a thing is just as important. The Spirit of the living God at work is still happening there, the same way that it's happening or that it happened on Christmas, that it will happen on Easter. And while there are moments in our lives that will form who we are as people and as a worshiping body more concretely than other days, we are not whole if all we are the top and the bottom, like those two big moments. We are the everyday relationship in between.
Our relationship shouldn't be based on top and bottom. We should be more versatile.
I am the associate. I am the associate pastor here at Plymouth, and so I and I think about it, I'm like, my God, I've been in ministry in some form or another for 17 years, and I have never preached an Easter.
Huh.
I have done Christmas Eve, but I've never preached an Easter because that's when the senior minister is expected to be in the pulpit. And when do I preach the Sunday after Easter? When do I preach the Sunday after Christmas, the Sunday after New Year's? And it's upsetting to me to see the drop off in attendance on those days, but also we had a director of music who would say, well, we're going to give the choir the day off, that Sunday off, the Sunday after Christmas, because they did Christmas Eve and they did blah blah. And I'm like, wait a minute, why are we punishing the people who come on those days? Why is this any less than any other day of the year? This is just as in, and those people that come are just as important as the 350 that came on Christmas Eve.
Well, and it's finally Christmas.
Like, it is finally Christmas.
Time during Christmas break, it's actually Christmas finally.
Or it just was.
Well, yes, I mean, but you know what I mean. It's And by the way, I want to note, the last time I was a senior minister with an associate minister, I did offer numerous times. I said, why don't you preach Easter? It'll be great. Because I was an associate also. And I was like, I'm never going to get to preach Easter. So,
well, and in our church, we divide things. I have not preached Christmas or Easter yet, but it actually is in part by design. I preach all of Holy Week. I do Palm Sunday. I do Ash Wednesday, Palm Sunday, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday. And for me, Monday, Thursday is my favorite service of the whole year. And so if I get to preach that, you can have Christmas and Easter. I don't care. Because for me, that table is what does the work and what calls us back to community every year. And that's why I think that the little worships in between are really meaningful, because Christ is going to resurrect. Christ is going to be born. It'll happen. And I'm not saying that it's not great and big and like, that's cool. But feeding the one who will betray you, washing the feet, and those feet were not beautifully manicured and pedicured the way that, we do, hopefully if you were someone that does like a ritual foot washing in your church, like there's probably, you probably take a little bit of care beforehand.
Nasty feet.
Yeah, there's nasty feet. And so like, I don't know, give me a nasty foot service any There's your number 2 for your deuces of my silly statements.
We're just this is going to be our promo for this episode.
Give me a nasty foot service anytime over a really pretty Easter service, because I think that it is the service for me. Again, Maundy Thursday is the service that we are called to. It is the little vignette of our faith that I most resonate with.
Well, and forgive me, I'm going to tie it into company right back in it. Is that being alive?
Mm-hmm.
And is being alive about dying, or is being alive about resurrection? That is being alive about this life, or is being alive about the next life?
I think being alive is about being present.
Oh.
And I think that is why in my faith and my understanding of a God that is with us and journeys with us and is born into a humanness, it is about that present moment and the relationships that we build in these present moments. We just had a kind of harking back to our conversation on Into the Woods, right? What is it? Sondheim calls us into these moments to be really present, and to look around you, and are you in the right story, and are you at the right party, and are you caring for each other well? Here's your gift, return it. Is not the church that we are called to be, and yet we make space for it. And I think that is part of what we are called to do.
I think being alive is being in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that I find God not as a being, but as the web of connectedness between human beings.
Mm. Oh, space between atoms. That's mostly what we are.
Mm.
Okay, so I want to ask a question in that, and I love the idea of the God is connection and God is love type thing. And interestingly enough, I'll tell you after the recording, sorry deuces, that was one of those wonderful hints. But remember, Spiff said nasty foot service like 3 times. We literally, before the show, I want y'all to know, we were talking to Karen about how Spiff said, like, I'm a fan of hard meats in one of our episodes. And
it was like season 1.
It's great. But now we have a new merchandise opportunity for give me a nasty foot service. Being alive, I do my best to not be ageist in either direction. And at one point, I accompanied a couple of friends of mine when they would do auditions, and I was helping them out. And my friend was 22 years old, and he was singing "Being Alive," and it just didn't work. And what we all said to him was, "You just don't have you don't have it. You don't know what this is." And I think about teaching improv to high school students and college students, and it's like it's almost like doing an imitation of what they think life might be like, but because they haven't experienced it, they can't. But then I think about like the first couple of years of ministry for whoever it is. And maybe it's a 23-year-old, maybe it's a 53-year-old whose second career, maybe it's an 83-year-old who's doing this on a lark. I don't know. We create an expectation of knowledge. It's like there's this much bigger field for all of these little things that get fit in. And it breaks my heart a little bit, because you really don't know what it's like until somebody sits in your chair and you're like, that's not okay. I don't know. And of course, relationship then is, that was an Arthur question. That didn't
That was
actually
an Arthur question.
My apologies.
No, but I think it goes back. I really like what Karen said. I agree. Being alive is being in relationship, whether that's with each other, with God, with yourself. I think that there's something there, that the relationship to ourself is an undervalued relationship in the church. And that is truly what it means to be alive.
Karen, thank you for doing this interview with us. This has been absolutely marvelous, and for talking about company. It's been just an honor and a privilege. I want to keep us cognizant of the time because we do that as a service to ourselves, to our guests, to our listeners, to our viewers. We have a final question, and Spiff is the one who answers it marvelously, but also asks it first.
I try. Yes, Karen, thank you so much. Karen, can we find your work anywhere? This play that you wrote?
Well, hopefully, eventually. We performed it twice here in Wichita. It looks like it will be performed again in Tulsa at the seminary on February 20th. And I think I'll probably do a pay what you can performance here in Wichita before that time, probably at Mosley Street Melodrama. So, and yes, I would love for other people to do it. Because I think it starts a conversation. And we had a talkback session after each time that it was performed, which was really interesting and beneficial and helpful and got people thinking. Yes, if somebody wanted a copy of it or wanted to perform it, I would love that.
What's it called?
It's called Suffering Church.
Ooh. All right, friend.
And we will absolutely cross promote it when things go out on social media, because we're excited to share this with our folks and make sure things happen.
Yeah, so make sure you like and subscribe to this channel or anywhere that you are listening to this, and then stay tuned for all that Karen is doing. But Karen, as is our final question, and for everyone, the through line of this show, what biblical character, theme, verse, chapter, whatever, are you most reminded of in company?
I think the matriarchs and patriarchs in Genesis, because of those relationships are so complicated and sometimes messed up, and it's people trying to live together faithfully, I guess. I don't know, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Because I think in company, you've got all of these relationships and all of these people trying to live together and be community. And it's almost never perfect. And it's complicated and it's messy, but they're still trying and they're still in relationship. So that I guess is the first thing that comes into my head.
I like that.
I love that. I'm going to piggyback on it. I was going to say that being alive is the golden rule. Just the law and the prophets, that's the sum of it. Because we talk about loving your neighbor or loving your enemy or loving God, but it's like somebody need me too much, somebody know me too well, somebody pull me up short and put me through hell and give me support for being alive. And love is messy and hard and obnoxious and costly and sacrificial and beneficial and beautiful and terrible. Oh, you're always sorry and you're always grateful when you're in relationship. There it is.
There it is.
Steph?
My 23-year-old daughter recently said, this was actually at one of the talkback sessions for my show, because she was in the production. She said, church is like a group project. And you know how we all feel about group projects. When I say to my college students, we're going to do a group project, no one gets really excited.
Oh.
because I end up doing all the work.
Somebody feels like they do all the work. Somebody tries to take control. Somebody, and that's what the church is. And that's what relationships are, I think, is they're hard, but boy, I think it's worth it when they work.
Mm-hmm.
Amen.
Amen. And Spiff?
I'm gonna go with another 100 people as a cross between, hear me out here, Tower of Babel and the Great Commission. That there is this, especially for the 14th, I live in New York City. I know the 14th Street Station. And it is an amalgamation of the people going out into the world, having come to this one place, speaking all the languages, doing all the things. And also another 100 people and another 100 people and another 100 people that we as the church are called to interact with and love and bring in and send forth for the next 100 people to come in and send forth. And so it is I think the two of them go hand in hand in how we understand how we are called to spread about in our own uniqueness, and how we are also called to continue the space to be held for the next 100 people.
Okay, I gotta ask though, and that's a marvelous answer, and thank you. Can you really tell a New Yorker by his or her ass?
Probably. I mean, you can tell if they've got a walk up, if they've got a elevator. You can the real test for a New Yorker is where do you get, what's the best bagel or pizza in the city?
Well, it's Ray's original, obviously. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my behind. Karen, Rob, thank you very much for being with us today and for that diatribe on New York. Karen Robb is a marvelous playwright, actress, minister, and friend to all humanity. We appreciate you being with us. Also, we appreciate Jeff Wunrow Designs, JEFFWUNROW. I'm sorry, I messed it up, so I just went with it. JEFFWUNROW.com, liturgical textiles for all seasons, varieties, and needs. On behalf of 2 on 1, I'm the Reverend Arthur Stewart.
I'm the Reverend Stephanie Kendall.
And Karen?
Reverend Karen Robb. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on 2 on 1. Goodbye, everybody. Get more 2 on 1 at 2on1project.com.